This month's edition of Devin Townsend Podcast is again presented by InsideOutMusic, and this month's featured release is by a band called Wheel. The album is called Charismatic Leaders. Stay tuned at the end of this podcast, and there's an interview with James from Wheel. And it's Wheel good. Hey everybody, this is Dev. Welcome to the Devin Townsend Podcast. This month, this is Thomas Haake from Meshuggah. Thomas has been a buddy of mine for many, many years. Thomas is a brilliant guy. He's a funny guy. He's a good friend. And I'm very flattered that he took the time to do this. Anyway, Devin Townsend Podcast. Tomas Haake. See ya. But
no worries, man.
How about yourself, man? Are you okay?
I'm pretty good over here. Just started kind of slowly getting back into drumming again after 2 months off, and I think I've told you this before. Like when we don't have anything planned, I'm not one of those guys that are so like I need my instrument like every day. So if we don't have anything planned, I don't play drums. It's kind of bad because it's it takes me a while to get back into it for sure. But yeah.
I feel that playing the instrument becomes a luxury at this point. There's so many things that are required in order to facilitate the opportunity to do so that when I finally do play, I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, I remember loving this at one point.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But I think we do live very different lives. For me, it's not a shortage of time or opportunity. I'm literally in the same house as the drum kit every day. I just opt to not go and play it. I just do not choose my instrument. Everything else comes before that. So there needs to be like a solid plan for us. Like we got to go on tour, so best get back into it, man.
Yeah, buddy. Well, I mean, it's I appreciate you doing this, and I've been thinking about how I was going to structure this because I wanted to be clear about what it is I'm trying to do, and the biggest thing I want to avoid is making this more awkward than it already is by asking questions that are personal in ways that I don't mean to. And I think the best way for me to start is just to say that the whole function of this as a fundamentally selfish artist is as I'm writing, I'm trying to get perspectives on how other people work. And,
okay.
Yeah.
I kind of got that. I mean, not that you were super thorough in your explanation of what this would be, but I think I kind of got the idea of what it was going to be ish.
Yeah.
So
well, let's see.
Have to wait and see, I guess. Well,
I agree.
I think it will crystallize fairly shortly.
Yeah. Same, man. Well, let me ask a couple questions first. Here's my first question. Do you remember the first time you read an interview with Yngwie? Like a big interview with Yngwie?
I know I don't. I remember listening to him a lot. I listened to Yngwie quite a lot when I was like, I would say like 14, 15 to like 18. Like I had like 2, 3, 4 years there maybe that I did listen a lot to, like the first like 3 albums or whatever. But I don't know. I'm weird, I guess, in a sense that people have also through the years given me autobiographies of famous musicians. They could be drummers, it could be The Dirt, or it could be like I have all those books. I never read a single page of them, and I never really like was that interested other than the music. I in a sense, I didn't. I don't know if it was some kind of I didn't want to like take away the mystery of who they were as a band member, or just keep like the image of that I would have of a band or of certain musicians. I didn't want that ruined in a sense. So I never read anything like that. So that kind of goes back even to I think interviews in a sense too, and like interviews in magazines and stuff like that. And even in the drum magazines where you see like, oh, this is Steve Gadd or some drummer that I looked up to. Uh, I still was never really interested in hearing what they have to say. I just want to see them play or listen to them play. So I think that kind of that is probably the reason that I don't think I've read much about what Yngwie said. I have seen videos, obviously, and the guy is, I mean, he's amazing in many ways, and he's certainly very un-Swedish in the sense that he's very kind of a very sure of himself and very kind of not having what we call the Jante law in his system. So yeah.
That's the reason I ask, and that was actually the next question. That's how it's pronounced, Jantelagen, not Jantelagen?
Yeah, we say Jantelagen, which is but it's not a law by any means. It's just kind of I think a word that kind of describes Swedish people, and it seems to be like the further up north you're from, the more heavily rooted that is kind of in the culture and in the people, that you're not supposed to think you are like better than anyone else, or don't be cocky, So he is very much the antithesis of that, obviously, which is kind of liberating for Swedish people to see one of us, that is like completely the opposite, and where it's like me. I can do this, I can do that. I'm better than the rest of you. And in most cases, he actually always were. So,
how did it make you feel when you not feel, but how did it like affect the decision with the band and everything that goes into making a statement like that, to have somebody from the hometown or from the home country just so much the antithesis of that Jantelagen thing? Was it were you like psyched on it, or was it something that was embarrassing, or?
I don't know. I think it was. I think they're more psyched than anything else when you see someone else do it. Someone else that dare to not be that Swedish, But not that it really had any effect on it. We're still very much those people, and even at this point in time, us as musicians in the band, we kind of have that very much. We're still very. We don't want to be boastful about what we've accomplished or anything. So it's like, we're not that special. We're not that good. We're trying. We're doing some things that may be interesting to some people, but at the end of the day, it's nothing special. That kind of thinking is infused in what we do.
I put up the before we started talking. I looked up Jantelagen, and there's 10 rules for it. It looks like.
Okay.
I mean? Yeah, and it's a lot of what you've said, right? And that sense of humility, I think, permeates. I've been fortunate to have a bunch of friends who are from Sweden, and there's like that kind of humility that comes along with a lot of those relationships. That's very refreshing, specifically when it's a counterpoint to such extreme musical ideas. And I think the Yngwie Malmsteen thing comes back because most of the time people are just like, I can't believe he did that. If people were raised in Sweden, they're like, I can't believe this guy did that. He's like this. The
whole you unleash the motherfucking fury kind of thing. That is very extremely un-Swedish, but it's fun too. You laugh at it because he's also such a character.
When you guys are writing, I know you've got your space there. Are you willing to describe some of the processes that happens in terms of just the technical aspects? Is it like everybody's in a different room, and then ideas are presented to each other at a certain time? Is it like a work day, or is it more informal than that?
It's very informal, and people kind of do their thing on their own. Over the last like 2 albums, me and the bass player Dick, we've been working together a lot at this very computer, and this is kind of where we've been creating a lot of the more recent years stuff that him and me have have been making together. But then you have Morton. He lives like a 6 hour drive from here up north, so he works whenever he feels like it, kind of, and you never know. Uh, Sometimes he's very prolific, I would say, compared to me and Dick, or some of us. We're more like, now we have this period that we're supposed to write because we need to have a new album. So then we'll start writing like on the okay, not this week, but come Monday, we're going to start. Whereas Morten, for example, is more like whenever he feels that he kind of records stuff all the time, more or less.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is not even Meshuggah meant for Meshuggah at all. He does anything from stuff that sounds like 70s, like prog or arena rock, or just very airy, like moody vibe things. And so I think he just has that kind of drive. When he has an idea, he has to like kind of do it right away, or get it on print, so to speak. Whereas some of us are more, okay, now we start working, and let's hope something good comes out of it.
I was going to say as well, and I'm going to cut this out if this gets used, is, it feels weird for me to feel like I'm trying to put you on the spot. I'm really not, man. I
know you're not, man. I know you that well.
Yeah. I just feel that it's like, at the same time, other than AC/DC, there's only been one band that I thought, they galvanized a concept to the point where they can refine it. So it's essentially a perfect idea, and that the nature of that is so rare, man, and it's so ephemeral. It's less about trying to dissect it and more about trying to understand how the nature of being raised up in the north of Sweden, and how the whole idea of humility and like a collective mindset creates this. Because I think a lot of it comes from what I can tell, you've got a bunch of different characters that bring different strengths to it, that then have an organization they've put together that is able to say, okay, we've got this idea. How does that vet with everybody? We've got this idea. We've got this concept. We've got this art. And at the end of it, the strength of it is more than a single person.
Yeah, for sure. We always kind of called it to ourselves. We call it the band filter. So whenever we hear someone present something to each other, I mean, at this point in time, I will say also that we've played together for 30 plus years. It's of course something that we already know. When we present something, it's not going to be something that is so otherworldly or away from what we all feel that we should be and doing, and what we're good at doing. So less and less maybe surprises, in the sense that, like, what the hell is this stuff? This sounds like I shouldn't. I refuse to play this. It's but yeah, there is like something of a band filter where we collectively kind of decide, or sometimes we will even suggest, like, for this, maybe if we did this, but even that is less and less, because just because of that same thing, the longevity of the band, how long we play together, and how much we kind of already know as we're working on material. We already know, is this going to fly or not, and if it flies, for example, with me and Dick, if we feel like, oh, this is awesome, this is cool, then it would be very unusual for us to hear someone else would have like kind of problems with it, or think that it's not what we are, or what we sound like, or what we should be doing.
Does everybody share responsibilities in that sense? Like, when you're all at the studio together, does everybody cook, for example?
We don't really do that, and we're not here. Actually, less and less together as a unit here in this place. So this is more or less over the last like 10 years, more and more me and Dick that work out of here. Jens works at home. Frederick works. I mean, you've been to his studio. He has a fantastic place. So he works out of there. And at this point in time, it's more or less just like the last few days before a tour, we'll get together and kind of go through the set like once a day for like 2-3 days. That's pretty much like when we all see each other, all 5 of us. Whereas it used to be more us, like the whole bunch of us here at this place, but life, kids, etc., and we don't even live, all of us, in Stockholm now. So of course that's less and less of that. The last time we really like kind of worked together as a whole unit, like, and really like all of us, all 5 of us in the same room, was for Catch 33 back in 2005. And that was also like early years of this place. Our lives were way less structured, and we just kind of hung out and drank beer and watched like Japanese horror movies, you know. And I even lived at this place for like a year and a half in between like apartments, and Morten did as well. So there was a few years where we were really like here, you know, all of us, and working kind of more together. Same with the EP that we did in 2004, the year before Catch 33. That was kind of the same thing. It was something we all kind of worked together on, and everyone had ideas, and everyone kind of wrote riffs for it, just as the same as we did for Catch 33. So it's a shame, you know. It was a time that we remember very fondly, and it's, I think, something that gelled us together even more as a band, that we did have those months for those 2 recordings that we really sat and figured everything out as a whole, as a unit, as 5 people. But like I said, life and kids and all that, and people move in, and you know, it's not necessarily possible to keep that up, you know. So here we are. Now it's
man.
Disappointment and dark thoughts.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, who's got the worst farts in the band?
That's probably me, man.
You figure? Yeah.
I have the most.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. I'm the biggest producer.
So it's quantity, right?
I would like to think so. You know, that's a positive. That I'm the big creator of that kind of air. Let's call it air.
Yeah, King Flatus.
Oh no! Please don't. Just don't
not a
do
word.
it. Yeah,
not a word. Not a word.
This might, you know, you never know. This might spread and it might catch on. So
that's my name, man. So I'll stick with that.
All right. Good to hear.
In the how long do you think, just out of interest, did it take for the idea? Because it seems like what's really benefited the music, from my perspective, is the boundaries. You know, there's an aesthetic to it, visually and sonically, that is so clearly defined in terms of rhythmically and sonically, and just the overall tone of it. How quickly do you think that came together when you were first working? Is it the first record, second record?
Yeah, it slowly kind of gelled into something that more became just uniquely us. And I think it wasn't really until like maybe Chaos Fear that in '98 that we really, where it felt like, looking back at it, it felt like that's where it kind of landed, and where we landed as a, like, we're all pulling in the same direction, and now we're really kind of in sync with each other. I mean, easier also to hear like influences on the first album, for example, and then the first EP from '89 is very clear that, you know, there's a lot of Metallica in there, there's some Anthrax in there, there's some, you know, Megadeth ideas, and it's whatever was at the time, mixed with some, you know, like German metal and stuff that people aren't maybe so familiar with, but it was still kind of a, like a mishmash of those things, but just try to make it more like something. We were already trying to like kind of push the boundaries as far as like what we did rhythmically and stuff like that. But it feels to me when I look back, it was way more scattered and not focused. And also we were so hungry and we wanted so much that we would put so many ideas into each song that they became like weird experiments almost of sorts, that where you kind of lose the feel of it being necessarily a song, like this is a track, and it's more like a showcase of how many different riffs and how much crazy stuff can you do rhythmically on the drums and on the guitar for each track. And that, I mean, that's maturity as well, and we were young and so on. So over time you of course you realize that you want to and you need to streamline it into something that is maybe more effective or efficient, if you will, but still have it be like truly you and not lose that aspect in this transition. You don't want to lose like what we had that was unique. We had Frederick's guitar playing, his signature leads, and Morten's great like rhythm playing, and we had those things that we knew were great, and I could play drums. We had a vocalist that sounded more like hardcore, and we always wanted to keep it like that. That was always like play to your strengths. You know what I mean? So that I feel like kind of landed more in like 95 Destroyers Improved, but even more so in Chaos Fear, which to me feels more like the songs starting to become more like songs, like signature. I mean, of course, Future Breed Machine, very signature track in its own regard, but not many songs on that album are that kind of like focused. So I feel like that happened more on Chaos Fear, and then for each album, I think we just more and more we got more and more calm and secure in our sense of self and what we were gonna accomplish for this album, for next album. So you mature as you go, and you kind of learn what our strengths are.
Do you remember, was there a movie that you guys were watching during that Tool tour that you did?
We watched a lot of weird shit on that tour, and I think a lot of it, music and movies, were very much something that Justin or Danny would bring to us, and they used to hang out on the bus some nights, and we'd be drinking and kind of playing music for each other and stuff like Autechre and like Square Pusher and stuff like that, but also really like odd stuff. I remember there was a band called the fucking Champs.
Mm-hmm. I remember them.
That I had never heard previous, and they had a one song that I think is the title of the song is like Thor is fucking awesome or something like that. It's just it's a great,
That's a great
fantastic title. Yeah, and it's just kind of guitars and like more and more guitars and just layers and layers of guitars, and that also, not only was it something that we thought sounded cool, but it was also maybe to a certain degree something that we like took a little bit, kind of the idea of just doing like layers and layers like that. And that makes me think of strapping, like the first time I heard City, and just the layers and just the amount of stuff that was just like, oh my lordy, what's going on here? It's like so much information just packed into it, But I can't remember any specific movies. I remember us watching a ton of stuff, but I'm pretty sure it was fucked up stuff, because that was kind of, whether it was music or movies, it was kind of the go-to. Try to find the most weird, off the beaten track kind of films that you could. I know that was Takashi Miike or Mike Takashi, whatever it is, a Japanese director and filmmaker. So we did used to watch a lot of his stuff during that time, and Yeah, there's a whole he's made so many movies, and in the late '90s and early 2000s, he was just completely bonkers, and pretty much anything by him was something that we would go to, like try to download or try to get hold of if we could.
What sort of stuff? I'm not familiar with the stuff. Like, is it sadistic, or is it horror films, or is it just psychologically strange?
It's just first of all, uh, Asians, I will say the dialogue in movies and stuff is very different from Western productions, so it's already going to be weird. But yes, they were usually like horror slash, you know, just sometimes humorous. Uh, there's a movie called Visitor Q that is just it's just messed up, but it's kind of horror, but not really, but also kind of humoristic, and it's hard to put a label on it, really.
Um, it seemed like right around that same time, because I guess what was the record after that? Was it Nothing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. Uh, was there a shift at that point too? It's like in tone, in a sense. It's like, I remember that was the first record that, because we did that tour for that record, and I remember listening to it prior to the tour, and attempting to sort of get a sense of what the the concept or what the vibes were, and it was existential in a way, right? And I remember just being really intrigued, just conceptually, by it. And I guess the question would be, in that sense, when you had said a couple minutes ago that each record you're sort of defining in your own mind collectively, okay, this is what our goal is for this one. Does that play into theme as well? Is the theme a part of that goal, or do you just let it flow, and then where it ends up, it ends up?
Uh, I would I would say the theme is part of the flow. Sometimes very hard, and it not necessarily something that is like outspoken or something we necessarily discuss. But I think we all felt more and more with each album that the art and whatever if there is some kind of theme or concept to an album, that it's also crucial and important what not only what the music is, but what the visual aspect is of it. What are you trying to say, like with a cover or whatever? It could also be stage art, like when you're out touring, like what is it, that what kind of vibe are you trying to give? But you're definitely right in the sense that the Nothing album was the I would say that's the biggest shift in our music
Mm.
sense, because that was also the first time we started using like 8 string guitars, and really kind of added that layer to what we were earlier doing. And it's kind of funny because the first guitars we were using were Nevborns that were hand built Swedish by a Swedish guy, and they were just detuned constantly, and they weren't really, for some reason they didn't sound good when you try to like chug and do power chords on them. So the guitars themselves kind of dictated a little bit what the riffs were going to be. So that's why it's so much single string riffing on that album as well, not only down to, but also most of the riffs are like single string stuff and not so much like chugging and power chord stuff. So even though we've been talking about how our minds are like they're set, we're going to do this and this, but then you also have this aspect of the instrument itself kind of dictating what you are. So maybe what I mentioned earlier, maybe it's all just lies. I don't know at this point, but yeah. So you catch me there. You see what I mean? It's like
I do.
the
Yeah.
guitars had a huge impact on how that album came out, and I think after Chaosphere, which was intentionally, we wanted it to sound chaotic, and kind of like over the top and like fast stuff that it's kind of hard to get a grasp of what's going on, like rhythmically a lot of times. And then for Nothing, we just kind of dropped like the average tempo down by like 40 BPMs. So in that sense, I'd say maybe the most profound album for us in a sense, in that regard.
I um I I was thinking about the similarities between Canada and Sweden. There's always been. I think Canada's got a bit more, obviously, North America to it, but I think the best example of a similarity was if we're at a restaurant and somebody comes and we've all ordered food and none of us like it, and then the waiter or the waitress comes up and says, "How's your food?" We'll all, as a culture, be like, "It's great.
Yeah,
Everything's really good."
Thumbs up.
And a thumbs up. And then as soon as they leave, everybody's like, "See what she's wearing," or whatever. Everybody starts talking shit about them.
Oh, that's funny. That's that sounds pretty Swedish. Yeah. Yeah. That's
totally.
And we have, of course, over the years, we've also noticed that there is a lot of similarities between Canadian people and Swedish people. I think just maybe we'll live kind of in the same longitude, latitude, whatever. I don't know if that has something to do with it. So equally kind of long winters and dark winters and stuff. But there's definitely a difference in the people, I think, from North American people to Canadian people. There's definitely a difference there. I'm not going to say that one is worse or better, but yeah, Canada's better.
Yeah, America and Canada for sure. I mean, some of my closest friends are American too. But there is, maybe I think it's also, I find that in Canada and forgive my Swedish, but up in Umeå, it's there's a similar sense of the evocative nature, of the environment where it is still and there is a lot of vast nothing. And in that sense, it's similar to Canada. I remember being in the UK and seeing a bluff or a hill and being really unused to the idea that over top of that hill was just another town or another burg or another city or a freeway, where in British Columbia, where I'm from, over the mountain, there's like 2,000 miles of fuck all.
Nothingness, yeah. Bears and wolves, yeah.
That's it. And there's something about that I really think plays into at least my creative mindset, because in a sense you've got a lot of potential to fill. It's not like you're surrounded by it, and in a similar way, I find that up north in Sweden, there's that same sort of sense of stillness to it that probably plays into it as well. And
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right about that, and I think there's what we call a Norrland, or up of the northern part of Sweden. There's maybe a little more what we call vemod, which is like a built-in kind of. There's a sadness. There's a sadness, but there's also in that sadness there's some kind of it's the spirit of Norrland, if you will, and that is something that I think is part of our music as well. And if you listen to like calm stuff that we've done over the years, and it's kind of infused there, not necessarily always audible, but it's definitely part of who we are as a band. And that's has to do with the vastness. It has to do with long winters. It has to do with endless forests and endless mountains, and there that plays into it, and it's just kind of ingrained in you somehow, and that's bound to come out. Whatever's ingrained in you is definitely gonna, if you're honest at all about anything when you're writing, that is bound to somehow have some kind of effect on your music.
What was that term again? I love that.
Vemod.
Yeah.
VEMOD.
And so in a sense that's like summarized by saying like there's a sadness to the stillness that is peaceful, or you're at peace with it.
Kind of. And I would say this, Vemod, I would say so even more about Finnish music. They have that like even more. I think it's kind of less. Russia, I don't know. Northern Russia, probably. It seems pretty sad and dark up there. And then Finland, and then Sweden, and then Norway. And Norway seems they're a little more happy-go-lucky. They're a little more happy. They try not to. They have plenty of black metal, and they claim to be the saddest and the most depressed. But I'm not so sure. I think the Finns win that race, to be honest.
So yeah, in the race for the saddest Scandinavian country, Finland by a mile. That's great. Yeah, I think we're still there. I was going to say, what I'm starting to get a sense of, which is really helpful as well, is it's got to be also frustrating as well when people who have such a fascination in what collectively the band is able to achieve keeps asking you about it. You know what I mean? Like, how do you do this? Like, what's the secret to it, or what's this and that? When in fact, it seems to be more like, we've been doing this for so long. We're honest with where we're at individually and where we're from, and just the nature of refining this idea has led us to an aesthetic that we all understand, and it's just onward, right? Does the attention that the band gets, is it problematic, do you think, for you guys?
No, I wouldn't say so. Not necessarily. But it's like you say. I'm sure you run across this all the time as well. Being the type of musician you are and doing your thing, and a lot of it being very unique. That you do get those questions a lot, and especially I tried a few times to act the drum teacher, and it's not my thing. And it was usually whenever the few students that I ever had were looking for a quick fix to be you guys. So that's not something you can just do. I can show them what I play as a drummer, but there's no quick fix or easy way to kind of become or have a band that has a certain vibe or has something uniquely theirs. That at least not that sounds like us, and that is going to be probably true to members from Holland or from Hungary or Italy. It's going to be different. So in that sense, yeah, there's no real quick fixes. But then again, like yeah, what you were onto there, as far as like people asking you like how do you do this, how are you this, and there's no real like kind of easy answer to that. I mean, we've talked more about those reasons now than I ever had in any interview, about like where we come from and how that actually plays into a lot of who we are as people and as musicians.
I think one of the big strengths of the band as well is it liberates other people from having to be that. And I think if there's anything, because I think, like you had even mentioned about teaching, it can come off as so patronizing too, like what you have to offer, you're dispensing benevolence and what you've learned and all this shit, right? I think that the only way to find any progression in your own music is to dig into where you're at as an artist and to try and find a way to articulate your truth through that. And when there is a band such as yourself that has found a way to encapsulate the spirit of what it is that you collectively represent, if anybody wants to be that, it seems like a foolish game in a way, because it's like, well, the reason why it presents itself with such power is because they're being true to themselves. So it's more about how do you become true to yourself as a musician, and then figure out what it is about where you're from, what your identity is, and mining that. You've said to me on a bunch of occasions, in perfect English, I'd say, that you don't speak English very well, which is always very funny.
Yeah. I have some problems with it, but less and less, I guess, because my wife is also now, since the last like 9 years, is a Brooklyn girl, so we, I speak English exactly pretty much all the time, so that helps. I mean, yeah. On those occasions when I said that to you, I did lie, and I feel okay with that. That's your problem. If if you have issues with me lying about my language capabilities, that's up to you. But of course, looking back at early lyrics, for examples of the band, it's pretty ridiculous, you know. So you learn as you go, you know. Like it's not our first language, and it never will be. So there's always going to be not necessarily the correct way of explaining something or saying something. But at this point in time, it's our prerogative, right? It's the artist's prerogative. So you can just, yeah, I know it's grammatically wrong, but I can do that because I'm the artist, right? So I get to choose. Yeah.
What I was going to say is, I think your lyrics are fucking amazing, and grammatically much better than where I'm at. I had to edit some text last night, and I write like I'm in 7th grade.
Okay.
How did you?
I'm sure that's not true, but I love hearing it. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I assure you, yeah, I write like a preschooler. I was going to ask though. And you can accept it as a compliment or not, but your lyrics are very they paint such a great picture, and they're so evocative, and just the words that you choose are really strong on a thematic level. Do you go about writing lyrics from the point of view of syntax and how it fits in rhythmically, or is it something that you sit with a notebook and write? Are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah, sure. It's actually, I would say, a little bit of both. I have periods when I will just sit down and kind of write lyrics that I would have. And a lot of times nowadays you have a phone, so sometimes I just, you know, I hear a phrase or I think a phrase, and I just jot it down, you know, for later. But a lot of times I will sit and just kind of write, and that usually only happens in the wintertime, when it's the darkest and the coldest out, and that kind of inspires, you know, lyric writing, you know, differently than the summer months. And yes, deliberately choosing an exaggerated wording that fits whatever music, you know. Sometimes I write for an existing song. Like I will write, and very syntax, like you say, very much like, oh, the lines, it needs to be one less syllable here. So you try to find another wording that is equally strong, but that is, you know, fits how I would prefer to have it rhythmically with the music. But just as the music, because the music is kind of very in the same way. You're trying to, it's big things, it's big movements, it's big, you try to do something that has impact. And so for me, it always made sense that the wording and the lyrics were something that is equally kind of an exaggerated form of the language, because to me it always feels like it fit the music better. But also there's so many things that tie into this, because the music obviously aggressive, so it's very difficult to not have lyrics that are also aggressive. So it's in some fashion or some way or form, the lyrics are negative or about things that we see as negative, and the wording is therefore aggressive and strong and exaggerated, just like the music. And for me, that's the only way to make them both gel together, is to have that the music and the wording is equally powerful, you know, if you will.
Do you consciously, with your lyrics, try to keep things away from being like personal?
Not always, but most of the time. There is a few lyrics that are over the years that have been personal, more from personal experience. That you have a song from Nothing that's called Perpetual Black Second. That is from something that happened to me, or that I did to someone else. So yeah, okay, on occasion, but most of the times it's more kind of an outlook on what's happening, what the world is, or what something around me, how I perceive something. And so you do kind of tend to stay away from the things that are very personal to you, but there are a few of those lyrics in there. Um, I'm trying to think of more of them. It's my mind. It's this gray matter in here is getting old at this point. I can't like I will see an image of Robert De Niro and I cannot grasp like Tony Richard. It's really weird. It's quite frustrating to be honest. So yeah.
I think it's almost like the thing that makes the music potentially frightening to some people. I've had some friends. I remember one guy. He the first time he ever took mushrooms, he listened to the band, and he was like terrified fundamentally. And I remember thinking, what's so interesting about that is the delivery of it. If it's not coming from a place of personal, if it's coming from a place of presenting ideas, there's a certain amount of large strokes to the emotional power of that I think a lot of times people would miss. Now, I guess the question that I would have based on that statement is, and depending on whether or not this is something that, even if you think this way, when you're thinking of extrapolating musical ideas, like when you sit around and you write, some people are of the impression that the artist writes it and it's a product of their experiences and their trip. And other people feel that there's a collective unconscious that you're drawing from. And your ideas come from being a finely tuned antenna that comes through your experiences. Do you have any thoughts on either of those?
I don't know. I never really gave that much thought. But since, yeah, as you're saying, if it's not necessarily something that is like a very personal thing, like where do you draw it from? And I really don't know, man. It's just something that it just kind of comes natural, and it comes with when you're writing. You get we all. I will say this: we all are very visual thinkers when we write music, and some in the band more than others. And Morten, for example, is to me also a great lyricist, and I have a great respect for his use of the English language, and he has for sure written quite a few lyrics over the years as well. And his ideas and his wording is maybe sometimes even more like powerful, and it comes down to kind of a visual type of thinking that, whatever your kind of your heart and your mind is drawn to, whether it be like something that's less like Lovecraftian, or whether it's something that's just bugging the hell out of you, bothering you about the state of the world, or a state of a certain thing at this point in time, it tends to become a visual idea. So when for example, on the latest album, when me and Dick were writing Armies of the Preposterous, and it's a 6/8 feel, but it's very like March like, in the sense that to me, I just visualize like kind of the footage we've all seen from like Second World War, or in North Korea, where soldiers are like marching in perfect like sync, but it's and visually it's beautiful, but it's the means or the end game there is very tragic and very dark and very violent, and it, so I think in that sense, like visually about something, when I do write the lyrics for the music, and usually I think for all of us in different degrees, that visual aspect is maybe sometimes even something that comes before even the first riffs ideas come. And sometimes the first riff idea will give people a kind of a visualization of what they're trying to do, even without words, even if you're just trying to play your instrument. So there is that. And I don't know if other bands like think like that much, but we've always known kind of, and we've talked about it too, like the actual like visual thinking. We don't know any other way to really to explain it other than that we all kind of have a very visual um, idea or conceptualization when we create. So there's that.
That's amazing advice. Actually, it's funny. I think even within myself, I didn't recognize until you said it out loud how much that kind of plays into it. And if you have an environment in mind of any sort of sense, whether or not it's the evocative nature of your surroundings, or if it's taken from some sort of, like you say, World War II or any of these ways that you can visualize people moving, that's a fantastic way to go about it. I was going to say as well, I'm not going to keep you too long because I really appreciate you doing this, man. And I really appreciate you tolerating these questions as well, because I think it's coming from a place of just intrigue rather than trying to be pushy about it. But I love the idea that the ways that you guys create seems to be a lot more about being in the flow of it and not thinking about it than it is about overanalyzing it. One last question for you. Do you remember your favorite movie when you were a kid?
That depends. The kid, that's a wide span. The one of the earliest movies that I remember that I saw at the theater with my dad was a movie called Flåkrypa Grand Prix or Flåkrypa Grand Prix. There's no easy way for me to. I'm gonna have to shoot you a text or email you the actual name and how it's actually spelled out. It's a Norwegian stop motion, like with dolls, about a car race, and it's absolutely amazing. And I just saw some scenes from it only like a few years ago again, even though it came out like mid 70s or something like that, and it still blew my mind. It's just very beautifully done. So yeah, that would be like the first one. And then I remember going to the movies with a friend of mine who was very sensitive kind of guy, and we watched E.T. and he was like crying the whole way through the whole movie, like not even waiting for like the sad parts where I'm struggling myself to keep the tears back, but he was just like, I don't know, it did something to his soul or something. So he was just basically sitting next to me, kind of crying the whole movie. So yeah, those are some strong memories, man.
That's amazing. I love that, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, brother. And it's great talking to you again. And been, maybe not 4 years the next time. And
let's hope not, man.
Yeah, brother. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, man. It's good to see you again, Dev. Even though
you too,
with the whole half a universe between us, but the whole computer thing, but it feels like you're in the room, so that's great.
Well, I've been fortunate to spend a bunch of time with you over the years, and I love your man balls, and until I get it, they're pretty good. They're really good, man. They're really good. Is one larger than the other? I forget.
Oh yeah,
it is
for sure. Yeah, the right one is way bigger than the left one.
Did you name it?
It bothers me sometimes,
I had one that was bigger and I had to get an operation, and now I've just one is now definitely bigger, but it was the one that used to be like the minor league player, so it's really emasculating.
Yikes, that's yeah. Especially you being like official about it makes you even more, emasculated. I would say.
Maybe it's a kink.
I don't know. It's gonna for sure be, for me, your sack from now on. It's gonna be a thing, man.
It's good, dude. It's like it's big enough that if I put it over top of a lamp, it looks like a road map. So.
Oh, but no cities on that map, right? It's just blue rivers and varicose veins. All right, man.
Okay, give my best to everybody, brother, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
This month on the Inside Out Minute, it is James Lascelles who sings and plays guitar for a cool band called Wheel. Here it is. Anyway, James, it's a pleasure to meet you, brother.
Hey, back at you.
Yeah, where are you from? You from the UK, obviously, or?
Yeah, originally from South Hertfordshire, but basically North London. It's really close to Enfield.
Oh, cool.
And then I moved to Northern England, to Scarborough for 5 years to go and study up there. And
Nice.
you've been to Scarborough from the face, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was in a band with a bunch of folks from Newcastle, and we lived in the middle of the country there for a year or so. So I'm well versed with the idiosyncrasies of the regions, man.
Hey, North Yorkshire is it's a whole thing.
It is truly, man. It's good sense of humor and lots of booze, from my recollection.
That hasn't changed much then. After that, I met a guy who won Idols in Finland, who was a student at my university. So moved over there to play a load of pop music that didn't really rub me the right way. I like a lot of pop music, just this wasn't very good. It was a lot more about drinking and playing covers than it was about, creating anything interesting. So after 2 years, I'd completely had enough. And I was just about to get married, and I realised I couldn't even afford to do that and what I was making in this band, so I quit. And the last gig we did was on a TV show in Finland called Tartu Mikki, which literally means grab the mic. And the TV format is people walk into karaoke booths around the country. They start singing a bit of a song. Back in the studio, if we knew it, we press a buzzer, the band starts playing, and you sing a bit of the song with the band. So I quite like the format. It's a cool idea.
That sounds all right, actually.
But we lost, by the way. We were absolutely shit. But the guitarist in the house band, we just kept on catching each other's eye. And the more nuts he was going, the more excited I was getting. So we had a long chat that night about just about metal and different parts of it that we both liked and disliked. And he was the other founding member for Wheel. And originally we never thought we'd do this for a career, because I didn't think there was a market for it. We just thought we'll play some stuff for fun. And these songs are sitting on my hard disk doing nothing anyway, so what's the damage and what's the harm? And from that, just step by step, we're now touring in another continent as a headliner. It's a really surreal thing looking back on it.
Well, congrats. I guess the best way to orchestrate this interview, because the idea is to sort of for those who may not have heard of your band, just to sort of give an overview. And so is everybody from the UK, and the band's called Wheel, correct?
No, everyone else is Finnish. So I've moved to Finland, and there've been quite a few members coming in and going out, but the current lineup, everyone is Finnish apart from me.
Oh, okay. And how many albums do you guys have out?
We've just released our third album at the beginning of this month.
And you're signed on to Inside Out?
We are, yeah.
For all of the records, or just for the newest one?
Just for the newest one and the EP we did beforehand. The first 2 albums and the previous 2 EPs we did for our management label services.
Awesome. What's if you were to define the sound of the band to someone who hadn't heard it before, would you be able to?
Probably. You phrased it so well. Now I need a really good answer.
Well, it wasn't intentional.
That's pretty. You asked kind of how I define the band. That's pretty much our entry level requirement: is making stuff that we would pay money for and playing shows that we paid to go and see.
Is it heavy?
It's pretty heavy. Yeah, there's no screaming. At least there's no unpitched screaming. I've got a lot of kind of gravel at the top end of my voice, so there's a lot of that in there. But I mean, the songs are often long. They're often polyrhythmic. We're experimenting more with instruments now. Quite a bit of cello and acoustic guitar that pops up. I'm a massive fan of 90s prog bands, which were the kind of jump in for this, back with Tool and Meshuggah, of course, back in the day, and more lately with Carnival in the ending part of the noughties. And over time, we've incorporated stuff like Alice in Chains and Radiohead and some Soundgarden and
cool.
All kinds of bits we all like wrapped up into this singular package. And it's kind of weird doing this album, because it's the first one we've outsourced pretty much all of it, and I haven't been doing the vocal edits myself, learning off YouTube in real time how to do it. So that part's really, really nice. I think the frightening part is having kind of so much and so little control over the outcome at the same time, if you know what I mean. Like, of course, the buck stops with me with the writing. But once you've tracked stuff, that's what it's going to be like, regardless of what your thoughts are about the opinion. And
Yeah.
then the song shifts, and to be honest, I can't think of a single time this has happened I've regretted it afterwards. It's always a good thing. I just think the process is very unpleasant and it's kind of
Yeah,
uncertain.
I 100% agree with you, brother. And I think it's funny too, because that's something that it isn't advertised on the tin when we get into this. It's like the things that are fantastically inspiring about being able to create for a living, if you're fortunate enough, are clear. I mean, it's a wonderful vocation. But at the same time, like you just suggested, the process can be just so strange and so unlike, at least from my ability to tell, most other careers. There's something very insular about how music and the touring life and the creation of it, and trying to find a combination of something that people are going to like, that you are comfortable enough to emote with, yet have that not tear apart your actual life. It's like it's a very nuanced thing, man. I mean, when you first started, what was the age where you were first starting guitar and singing and things like that?
I started playing guitar with a church group when I was about 9. I've been playing piano before that, but it just didn't really stick with me. Like I was interested compositionally, but the theoretical stuff just did not gel with me. I had no attention span at that age.
Hmm.
And singing, we had a gig when I was about 15 or 16 in one of my first bands, and the singer just quit because it was a school band, and that's the level of commitment you can expect. So I just said, well, fuck it, I'll do it then. And I was terrible at it, but I kept doing it. And over time, I got better. And now, for some reason, which I still don't fully understand, it's turned into a job. So
I'm with you. I think my trajectory is very similar, man. I only started singing because this dude with like suspicious hair uh came in and sang like shit and then quit. And then here we are, right? Like somewhere along the line, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm a I guess I'm a singer now, right? Like,
I mean, you were incredibly modest for saying that. I was actually at your gig in Finland last year, I think.
oh, sure, yeah,
But I know your sound tech, Chris, pretty well. He was
he's
sound
great.
teching for Leprous back in the day. I love that
Yeah,
guy.
same.
And he just hit me up and said, we're coming through town. Do you want to come and see the show? And I went with Jussi, our guitar player, and I was blown away. And I mean, you were talking about your stage patter, like, and how it changes from night to night. But you were on fire that night. You were talking about the buffet on the ships and how many pounds of. I'm just gonna leave it there.
No, how many pounds of shit we like? I mean, I appreciate it, man. I mean, I think you say you guys are headlining in the States now. That's awesome, man. This isn't the first tour that you've done, though, eh?
No, we've been here 3 times. This is the third one.
Awesome.
And it's surreal getting to be out here and headline finally. Like we have a lot of longer songs, so when we've been supporting, that's meant we get to play like 4 of them if we're
Sure.
lucky.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of nice getting to do a more eclectic mix of the whole discography we now have. Because I mean, we haven't toured that much. We did our first album in 2019, and that kind of blew up, at least by prog metal standards, and we started getting all these offers for tours with bands like Soen and Catatonia, which was
Awesome.
amazing. I
Awesome.
think we were even booked to play with you in Meshuggah at one point for some dates that got cancelled in Central Europe at one point.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Which look, we were amazed. Like, this is going to be an amazing night, and then and it's gone. But that was COVID in a nutshell, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is, man. Very much. Have you got who's the bands that are out with you? You got opening bands on this run, or
Yeah, we've got a band called Aviations from the East Coast out with us on this run,
cool?
and they're really cool. It's kind of there's a lot of fusion jazz in there. There's definitely some metal in there. There's even some stuff like pop punk they brought in. There's a whole weird mixture, but I really like what they do. They've got their own thing, and they're really good at performing it.
Do you live in Finland now, or?
Yeah, I've been there for 13 years.
Dang, man. And you're
It's
still smiling.
I mean, that's the hardest part because I'm not there at the moment. That's why the smile's happening.
I love Finland, man, but it's such a particular part of the world. It's like some of my favorite people and some of my favorite concert experiences have been there, but just the proximity and where it is geographically.
You've definitely been to Finland. Like
Many times.
this is all completely accurate. I mean, what I love about working with Finns particularly is, at least in England where I grew up, people are polite to a point, to a fault sometimes, where actually just saying, yeah, do you know what, I just don't like that would be helpful. Instead, they'll dance around the
Totally.
subjects. And Finland is the polar opposite. People will tell you exactly what they think. If they tell you they like it, they love it. If they tell you they hate it, they want it dead.
That's
And it's
awesome.
Extremely helpful when you're trying to write music for a group.
Yeah, specifically if you know that the impetus for those comments are not coming from a place of trying to be passive aggressive or whatever. It's just, no, this is what I
Absolutely,
do.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it there, man. I do. A friend of mine moved there recently, and he said it was, a beautiful place, but it was a very difficult challenge just to integrate the language, because I guess the syntax of it is just, what did I hear? The only other country that shares the syntax of Finland.
I think Hungary has some similarities.
That's what it was, exactly.
And I think also Estonian has a lot of crossover and similarities. Like Finns always say Estonian sounds like Finnish with a cold, because all the T's end up being D's.
Yeah.
I mean, once this was demonstrated for me, I kind of get where they're coming from. It's not an unkind comment. It's fairly true.
Well, and also I had also seen there was a breakdown of the amount of metal bands per capita, and Finland was way at the top. So it's something
Number one.
about something about the combination of all these circumstances come together in a brilliantly heavy stew. No, I love it, man. Are you in Helsinki or?
Yeah, I've just been in the suburb to the west called Espoo for, well, pretty much the entire time I've been there.
That's awesome, man. Well, we won't spend too much time. I just, if anybody was to participate with your music, if they're interested in finding you and checking it out, can you recommend a place they could go to do it, or the name of the new record, or where they can go to find it?
I can try and do all of those things. So the new
Nice.
album is called Charismatic Leaders. It came out on May the 3rd, and the reviews have been beyond our wildest expectations. People seem really into it, which is great to see. We'd love to hear what people think about it too. So if you've got any views about what you've heard, come find us on social media and tell us all the best comments, all the terrible ones, and even the ridiculous ones that have nothing to do with the album at all. We want to hear those as well. And regarding what else we're doing for the rest of this year, we've got a tour coming up in Europe in November, December, which is going to be another headline run with a band called Molly Baron supporting us.
Oh yeah.
And there is possibly more stuff happening before then, but I'm not at liberty to discuss it. So I'm just going to leave this mic drop clue out in the open, and we'll see how that goes.
Perfect, brother. Well, from what I've heard of the music, it sounds great, and I wish you all the luck in the world, man. And it's a pleasure making your acquaintance. Good luck with the tour, and I'm sure we'll meet each other sometime in a less informal way.
I very much look forward to that. And honestly, I've been a fan for a long time. It's great to chat with you as well. And
Thank you, brother.
take
I
care
really-
and enjoy the home life stuff where you can.
Well, I'm mixing like a motherfucker right now, so this is my world. But I'm gonna press stop, but don't hang up, please, until
I will not press anything.
The tools that make this podcast possible, provided by Roswell Microphones and X5.